I am in my goddess era. I don't want to be a princess, a queen, a boss, a babe, or even a bad bitch. I want to be a celestial being with powers that aren't of this realm.
Hello, Divine Ones. Minister Ashley here. And I am getting into, once again, another episode of the Women and Goddesses of the Bible. This series is spawned from the need for the rise of women and goddesses, for the truth to be revealed. We are in the year of 2025, the year of the Divine Feminine, so it's just that time. This discussion is about Ruth and Boaz. So it's a lot to unpack in this video. So I'm going to start off first with, you guys, if you have ever attended a church service or a Bible study, you know that the story of Ruth and Boaz is pretty popular. But there's so many hidden nuggets in this story. So Ruth is the ancestor of the line of Yeshua, also known as Jesus. In Hebrew, her name is from the Hebrew root word for sight. Something worth seeing, and maybe even friendship. I like to dive into the meaning of names because they have a great meaning to the story. You can glean so much information from the names in any text, but especially when we're talking about a culture that they name their children after attributes or what is going on in the time period. So when you are decoding a scripture, you want to look at the names of the places, people, and things. Okay, so she is the ancestor of the line of Yeshua, Jesus, meaning sight. So sight and something worth seeing. So something worth seeing, you already know that she's beautiful. Sight, this could reference foresight. This could represent like she has the ability to see into people's character. And maybe even friendship. So the traditional story about Naomi and Ruth is that they had a bond, somewhat of a friendship. Now, Naomi is her mother-in-law, which we will get into her in a moment. Ruth is a Moabite, a former worshiper of the god Shamash. And that god is the god of war and destruction, similar to Yahweh. So I will have another discussion about Yahweh and the gods of the Bible. Yes, I said gods of the Bible. Not just one, blessings, not just one God, but gods of the Bible. Another person that will figure, a deity that I will get into, is Asherah. Okay, so the thing about Yahweh and Shamash, the goddess equivalent to is Ishtar, Asher, or either Asherah or Astarte. And of course, you know I'm going to dive into those. Not in this discussion, so you have to make sure that you subscribe. You can also join the member section for as little as $2.99 a month. I just posted a video last night about the threshing floor, women in sexual energy, if you will. I'll keep it at that. So you can check that video out. It's across all the platforms. It's part of the members section, and I post over there weekly. So I also have a library over there. Okay. I will get into Asherah, like I said, in another discussion. All right, so let's move on. Ruth was married to Mahlon, meaning sickness, weakness, or man of sickness. He possibly died in the famine. So Naomi she had two sons and she had a husband. Her husband also died in the famine. So the Bible doesn't say famine, but it's speculated that it could have been a famine. So Naomi and Oprah. So Oprah is the sister-in-law of Ruth. All right, I'm going to get into the meaning of her name. So Naomi is from Naim, meaning pleasantness, joy, or delight. So according to the traditional story, that she was like an encourager, a mentor to not only Ruth, but also Oprah. And we don't know a whole lot about Oprah, although the Midrash does mention a little bit more about her character and about her. Okay. So, like I was mentioning before, she had two sons and her husband also died. So they passed away. So in this culture, men were prized over women. So men were the ones that had rulership in the household. So the women couldn't necessarily work. They may had, like, if you know about the Proverbs woman, she had her own business pretty much. And, I'm gonna get into her in another discussion too about the Proverbs woman. But so women could have positions of power in some instances, but also they could work outside the house, but it was up to their husband, or either if the husband had passed on, whoever was the head of the household as far as a male. Okay, so the sister-in-law Oprah, and her name means fawn, neck, or back of the neck. Being called the one who kissed. So if you know about the story, Oprah, so the sons, they already passed away. Naomi is like, you know what? Let's go back to my hometown where we could be provided for. I have relatives there. Oprah was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to head on back, At first, in one version of the story, so she sort of kind of wants to cling to Naomi, but Naomi is like, I guess she has like this sense like, you're not really going to, be a good match for where I'm going. So they decided to part their ways. Oprah was the one that kissed her, and then she parted ways. Almost like how, actually even in one of the texts, how Judas kissed Jesus before betraying him. It's almost like, although Oprah didn't betray her, she just decided to go her own way. Ruth is the one that clung. In the Midrash, Ruth Zuta, hopefully I'm saying it correctly, Naomi is ashamed of her Gentile daughters-in-law and doesn't want them to return to Bethlehem with her. And so the Midrash is a whole nother text. It is a Jewish text, and they also have like other stories that go deeper into detail about the lives of these people that the Bible sometimes may not dive deeper into. One thing that I have noticed, not just with like the text like the Midrash or, the Bible, but, this is like patriarchy almost altogether, how they compare women. And I talked about this in another discussion with Reverend Love from the Christian Witches and the Valerie Love channel. We discussed about rebellious women in the Bible. And you can check that video out on my YouTube channel. There we talked about the dichotomy between what is considered to be a good and faithful woman compared to the rebellious woman. And it's like this dichotomy, like they want to compare the two, and it's all to cater to the male ego pretty much. And as you guys know, I am writing a book about women and goddesses of the Bible, and this is some of the things I will dive deeper into, because this religion helps to shape our society. So when we can address the things in religion, what is falsity, what is good and fair towards all people, then we can build upon that. Because I know, me growing up in church, that I felt the struggle between, like, this doesn't quite feel right, but yet I'm being told this. It doesn't feel fair. I remember one time I asked a pastor, I was like, so will a man always be better than a woman? And you can probably guess what his answer was. I was really young. I was like a preteen about that time. It's another book in Ruth 𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒕. It's a commentary about Ruth. It dives deeper into some of the thought patterns and some of the truths that are, or opinions more so, because it's commentary about the story of Ruth. And one of the customs, this is another important fact, that one of the customs, it was customary for a man that died childless, such as Ruth's husband, for her to marry one of the brothers. So it had to be like a close relative. In this instance, she ended up marrying Boaz, which was a close relative. And the reason why that is important is because in the school of belief is that the legacy and the name has to carry on. And it was considered like almost like a mystic belief that the husband's dead soul was appended to the wife. And so the wife is almost like in mourning continually and almost in a way hunted by the husband's spirit until it is reincarnated in a sense into the offspring. So that way that the soul is free because it's trapped in the woman's psyche. And that way the lineage is carried on, his legacy, and as well as his name is carried on. Boaz. His name means in strength, by strength. He was the older man, about around 80 years old. So Ruth was about 40 years old. And I mean, that's not really old. Neither one of those ages, to me, in my personal opinion, was really that old. Boaz, yeah, it says that Boaz was like around 80 years old. But remember, in biblical times, like they lived to be about like 120 years old. However, I think that they even lived longer. Well, I know it further on in the text, earlier on in the text, that they ended up living longer than that. But honestly, I think that most people could possibly live to be well over 100 years old. So 80 years old, to me, in my personal opinion, is not that old. But, okay, in the text it says that he was like maybe around about 80 years old, and that was considered to be old. And another text I was reading is that when Naomi and Ruth arrived, that was about the time that Boaz was burying his wife, and his wife didn't have any children. Him and his wife didn't have any children. And so it's like around the not really celebration, but like the ceremony of her going home, of her funeral. Now, I believe this is in like another Jewish text that I read that. It is not stated in the Bible. But, okay, so his name, Strength. One thing about strength, I think that this is referencing not only just his physical stature, which that is common, but also his inner strength. He had the insight not to treat Ruth disrespectfully. I actually think when I look at the text that he was not respectful to her, but also he was attractive, but he had a level of restraint to keep him from giving into his desires until, which we're going to get into a little later. And some of you guys may have heard of it, but we shall see. So that's one school of belief, what I was thinking about, like he had a wife before. That's not in the Bible, but even if he did have a wife before, if he did not have a wife before, he was on the market. And I believe that Naomi knew that. She was like, yes, he is on the market. But there was another relative that was closer to Ruth's age, but also closer to kinship that even Boaz mentioned, like, see about him. I don't really recall his name being mentioned, although it could have been, but I don't really recall that. And he was like, why don't you just go see about him? And he turned the offer down. But that is actually good for her, though, because the thing is about that the age gap is that whether he did have a wife before and he has a second chance at joining in a relationship, or either if he did not, he never had been married or in a relationship before, it seems like he had a fondness of Ruth and held her in high regard. And I'm going to pull up the slide about their interactions. He was wealthy, hardworking. The thing about him working in the field is that, his body was tight. He had to keep good care of himself in order to be able to work physically. So the things that I feel like indicates that he thought fondly of Ruth is, yes, she was related to his family, to one of his kinswomen, Naomi. He noticed her as soon as she showed up on the scene. So I believe that it's something I was reading, like that Well, obviously, she had to leave her garments behind, her Moabite garments, because those were related to her religion, from earrings, bracelets, headdresses. All of that was related to her religion. And the thing with Shamash and Asherah, that you know about the prophets of Baal or Baal, whichever one, however you want to pronounce it, that they didn't like Asherah. And like I said before, that's a whole nother topic about that. So anything that was related to a foreign god, she had to leave that behind. She had to allow that part of herself to die off. So when she showed up on the scene, it wasn't like, okay, I can tell that's a foreigner per se, but I guess it was maybe her inner qualities. But I'm going to get into that because her light that shined through wasn't by accident. Okay, he offered her protection and safety. He was generous and provided for her and her family. Well, Naomi. He acknowledged her character, and her loyalty. He invited her to share meals with him and his workers, and he addressed her respectfully. Now, let's get into Naomi's ritual. One night, Naomi had a plan. She was like, "You gonna beg this man?" I was just joking. And she was like, "No, I really do believe that. Like, Naomi, she was wise, but I also feel like she already had a plan, obviously, when she came there, because they needed a place to stay. They needed provisions. In that day and time, women didn't, like how I said, they didn't have as much power and freedom as nowadays. So they had to be under the protection and guidance of men. And it's not that they weren't capable of, being able to take care of themselves. It was just the way how the society was set up. So her plan was, we will go where my relatives are, and you will get in good with Boaz, and then hopefully marry him, and he will be able to take care of us, both of us, and any future children that you do have. All right, so Naomi put her plan in action one night. She was like, "All right, Ruth, come here, girl. So what you're going to do, you're going to wash. You're going to go and bathe yourself." Now, if you watched my discussion about Queen Esther, Hadassah, if you haven't watched that, then go and watch it on my YouTube channel. I go into the glamour magic, the sexual rituals that she possibly used, and it's almost like the same tactics. So with them, what they would bathe with, it wasn't like they always bathed in water. There were different types of baths. So you had oil baths, and those oil baths were good for not just moisturization and the tightness of the skin and, healing and those medicinal properties, but it was also for glamour, because the smell, the aroma, and the longer that you would bathe in those oils and use the herbs, and the more that your body would exude that fragrance. So she was like, go bathe. Anoint yourself. So this is a whole ritual. Okay, so if anybody is into like magic, you would know that you have to go through the whole process of a ritual before you can even work your magic. So first you have to cleanse. She did. She washed herself. And then you have to anoint yourself, or anoint your tools. One thing is like the headdress. The headdress was like a covering, like how I mentioned before about the back of the neck, the sensitivity of the back of the neck, to cover the back of the neck, to cover the hair, because the hair was sacred. Even now, our hair is sacred. You can't just have anybody touching your head and your scalp. Delilah, the head worker, was Samson's hair. So she, in that culture, keeping your head as a woman covered, very beneficial. And it wasn't just because, like, the women, yes, women's beauty, but it were other reasons for that. The crown. Perfume. Anoint yourself, oils, and perfume. Cover your head. Wear the best clothing that you have. She was going to get that man. And go to the threshing floor. Like how I mentioned earlier, I have a members only video about the threshing floor. The threshing floor, women, and 𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒕. I'm just going to say 𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒕 to keep it, clean as much as possible. So check that video out if you are already a member. If you're not, you can join for as little as $2.99 a month, and I post over there weekly. And I do like a lot of esoteric studies. I also do like prophetic channelings and stuff. And go to the threshing floor. The thing about the threshing floor, that was a place for men to go and work. Okay, so you talking about men. You're talking about men that spend a lot of time together. Okay, so they're tired, they've been working, they only been around men. What do you think they would like? Refreshments, food, laughs, a little drink, and a little honey, So it's another story about Tamar, and Ruth. Ruth is, in one instance, is compared to Tamar because of the fact that, so Tamar was, I'm going to do her for a whole nother discussion, but it was one instance where she set Judah up, but he was on some felonious type of activity himself. Okay, he was seeking out a prostitute. So she utilized that situation, and it was it wasn't at the threshing floor, but it was where they, like the gate of the sheep, where they would shear the sheep. And so these places where men would go and work for, sometimes they'll be gone because it's a season. So they'll be gone for the season, or they'll be gone for a portion of the season. So they may not be around their wife. They may not be around they didn't have booze. I don't know. Maybe they did have some booze on the side or something like that, but they're not around women. And so those places at times were frequent for prostitution because, the men, they need, you get it. So Naomi told her, go to the threshing floor. He's going to be there because he got to work. She says, observe where he is sleeping. Wait till after he eats. So he got a full belly. He done had a little drink. He's tired. You wait till he goes to sleep. He goes lay down. See where he lays down. Make sure no one sees you. That's another thing about having the veil or the covering over the head. It acts as a visibility veil. If you spell it right, cast a spell on it. It could be considered a visibility spell covering. Okay, so make sure that no one sees you. Go to his tent and uncover his feet. Now, with the word for feet, so like I was telling you guys, Naomi told Ruth, go uncover his feet and lay down on his feet. That's already seductive enough, but it gets better. The Hebrew word for feet, a feminine noun, regel, foot or feet, is a euphemism for male genitals, okay? So let's insert that. So Naomi tells her to go to his tent after he had filled his belly, got a little drink. He's tired. He's been working all day. Only men around him. Who knows how long he's been there? He's so exhausted. He goes and he lays down in his tent. She lays her head on his feet. Yeah. So like I was about to mention before, another reference to feet being compared to genitals is in Isaiah 7:20. And I'm going to read it to you guys. And that day the Lord will use a razor hired from beyond Euphrates River, the king of Assyria, to shave your head and your private parts and cut off your beard also. So this is the thing we have to understand. that the Bible is full of instances like this. You'll be so surprised how much sexual stuff is in the Bible that is hidden in the language, but also hidden in the culture. And if you stay tuned to my discussions, and as you know that I am writing my new book upcoming, The Sacred Grail, Women and Goddesses of the Bible. And I'm going to dive into these concepts because a lot of things that we have been shamed for aren't actually something to be shameful for. So that way we don't have to run and hide in secret places and do things that we feel guilty about. Because guilt mostly comes from humans and their ideologies of what morals are. Okay? So that's why I provide all of this stuff that I provide. Not just for women and goddesses of the Bible, working on that, but also divination and magic. Speaking of which, did I bring my book up here? Oh, okay. I do have it. Speaking of which, my latest book, The Bible's Hidden Divination and Magic. Okay, you can find this on Amazon, also on TikTok, Instagram, and Etsy. And you guys don't know about this yet. I'm going to go ahead and reveal it now. I have a journal that goes along with the book. That's why I created this journal, to accompany the book. Yeah. But anyways, you guys, okay, I'm about to go. All right, I love you very, very much. And remember, a couple things. All right, Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now, we're working through Women and Goddesses of the Bible because I'm writing a book about women and goddesses of the Bible. Okay? But you can peruse this channel, my other platforms, for videos about magic and divination of the Bible, in the Bible. You can also purchase my books, my oracle decks, and also join the membership because I just posted a video last night about Ruth. It was about the threshing floor. So the threshing floor, women, and 𝒕𝒗. Okay? And the esoteric is an esoteric study. And it's for as little as $2.99 a month. You guys can join. And I will post weekly exclusive content. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll talk to you guys later. Many blessings. I'm so very grateful. And sending so much love y'all way. All right. Peace.